And we are live. Welcome, folks. I know we have some folks from World Anvil. I know we have some folks here from the Authortube Writing Convention, I should say. And it is such an honor to be here with you all today to talk about my favorite thing in the world building. So, yeah, folks, share in the chat where you've been coming from today, what sessions you've seen, or if you haven't seen any sessions, what sessions you might be planning to see. I'm really, really curious. I hope you're all having a wonderful, wonderful convention. And with that, I suppose I should introduce myself properly. That's me. I look much more serious there. So my name is Janet Forbes. I'm going to be Batman now. By day, I am the founder and CEO of World Anvil. World Anvil is an award-winning world-building platform, novel writing software. If you're into RPG campaigns, it also helps you run your campaigns as a campaign manager. And basically, it does all of my favorite things all together. Connects your worlds, connects your novels and your writing, connects your games into one easy to use package. And I made it with my husband about 8 years ago now. I started writing a novel, and then I realized that I needed something that didn't exist. I was creating this huge world, so that is where World Anvil came from. But enough about World Anvil. If you're in Authortube Writing Convention, you might be interested to know we have a YouTube channel, so you're there right now. Hi, welcome. Feel free to give us a follow if you like to learn more about world building and if you like to learn more about writing. And yeah, that is who I am as World Anvil. But I'm also a writer. I'm a published fantasy author. I'm a game writer. I'm best known for my work on the Dark Crystal RPG, which is right there behind me. I was the lead author on that project. I'm also a writing student of Mary Robinette Kowal. And yeah, I do a lot of writing. It's great. And as part of all of that, I love to communicate. I love to teach and share about the techniques I use, about world building especially. And so if that sounds like your kind of thing, maybe you'll enjoy my corner of the internet. But let's get to what we're really talking about today. In this seminar, we are talking about ways you can enrich your stories, your characters, and your plots, and the scenes and setting locations that you create, regardless of your setting. And we're talking about how to take the world building you've already created and share it through your stories in the most interesting and imaginative way possible. So if you have any questions during this talk, please throw them into the chat. I have my amazing partner in crime, Kat, behind the scenes. She is working with me on this YouTube channel. She works with me on all the content for World Anvil, and she will be grabbing your questions. And I'll make sure that I answer those at the end, as many as I possibly can. So keep them coming, and I will get there. So, what is world building? I think most of us have an idea about world building. It's when Tolkien sat down to write The Lord of the Rings, it's the elves and the languages and it's Mount Doom, right? It's how does the capital work in Hunger Games? That's world building, right? But what world building really is everything. And that is kind of the thesis of this talk. World building is fundamental, especially if you are writing science fiction and fantasy, but even if you are writing historical fiction, alt history, any kind of fiction, world building, your setting is literally the tapestry that weaves through your characters and plot. It is the foundation of every element of your world. It is the logic upon which your book is based. It is so important. And again, if you're writing science fiction and fantasy, especially, it literally defines the thing you are writing. It's not science fiction unless it's science fiction setting. It's not fantasy unless it's a fantasy setting. So when we think about world building, often we think of it as a thing to stick on at the end, a thing to embroider. It is literally the foundation of everything. So it is your character struggles, it is your motivations, it is stakes and implications in your setting. It's the wider world dynamics, it's the mood and genre expectations. The reason that The Witcher feels different to The Princess Bride is because of the way the world building is constructed. Okay? It's the way the setting is built as much as anything else. And often the world building is literally the darn plot. We will get to that. But just as an example, let's take Gollum from The Lord of the Rings. Because if you take away Gollum's history, if you take away the whole tragedy of Gollum being trapped between this immense weight of good and evil, being corrupted by this centuries-old ring of power, if you take away all of that, Gollum is a gross little goblin. That's all he is. It's the world building that turns him into this fascinating character. That's what instills his struggle. That's what makes him intriguing and wonderful and horrific and sad and all of these things. He's imbued with the world building. Another great example is the Hunger Games. Like Katniss's struggle in the Hunger Games. If you take away all of that world, it's just somebody trying to survive, which is already a noble struggle, don't get me wrong. But when you add in the political struggle, when you add in the political history and the spirit of rebellion that's glued into the world, all of a sudden that takes her from somebody who's trying to survive to a true underdog, to a political struggle, to something that is deep and evocative and catches the imagination. And that's what world building could do. I won't go through my other examples because I have a hell of a lot of slides and a hell of a lot of things to say. But I think you get the idea. And so we have all of this world building. We know what richness it gives. And we know that often we use in-world things to solve the problems our characters face. In fact, we should be doing that. If our characters have magic, they will use it to try and solve the problem. And that's where we get to, for example, Brandon Sanderson's quote: "An author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands the magic. If it looks like they've just waved their hand and something magical has fixed the plot, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good as a reader." And I would argue that is true for every single element of world building that you then use, or your characters use, to try and solve a plot. So that is what we're talking about when we're talking about exposition. That is what's important. So world building is important, but it must be handled with skill. Now, exposition, I've used this word a few times. Essentially what we're talking about is taking all of that world building and seeding it into your story. We're talking about all the different forms that can take, like dialogue, like what's technically known as free indirect speech. So the thoughts that your POV characters are having, that's a way to share world building detail. What your character is paying attention to, your scene locations, the costumes and the training and the items and the culture, all of this stuff, if you're clever, and I know you guys are clever, is a way that you can share deeper truths about your world. These are vehicles you can use. And that's really what this talk is all about. Because the best world building is like the egg in a souffle, or a cake, if you prefer cake. It holds everything up, holds everything together, and it isn't detectable as an individual element. It doesn't feel like, oh, now the author is doing some world building. It feels like something that's infused in everything. And when world building goes wrong, it's when that mix isn't right, when it's added as an afterthought. I've seen settings like this. I've read books like this where you read them and you're like, oh, they just added some pointy ears and a weird religion. They just tacked it on at the end. And it doesn't feel like it's worked through, and it just feels clunky. To use my metaphor, it smells eggy. Nobody wants an eggy cake. If it's not mixed in right, to use the metaphor, that's another way that world building can go wrong. Because nobody wants a big eggy exposition drop right at the beginning of your book. We don't want world building where there's no character emotion. We don't want world building information where there's no plot progression. We are writers writing for readers. And what readers connect to is characters and plot. But what readers will love is the deep immersion of your setting if you can weave it through right. And if it's not at the right scale and proportion. So this is something that a lot of beginner world builders can struggle with, particularly those who start from the top, the big systemic stuff, and then work down to character level. You end up with a great big explanation of how the government works, but I don't know what it feels like to live in this world. I don't know what anybody cares about. I don't know what everyday life looks like. And if you get too systemic and you're world building too much at the wrong scale and you're not filtering that stuff down, then your world building won't land for your readers and players. So really, that's what we're talking about. And we're going to start with characters. Now, I know a lot of writers, particularly discovery writers, love to start with characters. They'll take a character, throw them in a situation, and somehow there will be plot and then wonderful things will happen. Here is how to put the world building directly into your characters, to bake it into the cake, as it were, so you have your world building front loaded and it's easier to share and it's more integrated with your actual story. To start with, think about your characters' backgrounds. So as human beings, we are uniquely shaped by our past, even if that's a rebellion to our past. So for example, if you grow up in a very religious society, you might become very religious. You also might become anti-religious, but that is still a reaction to your upbringing. Or you might be still searching for your religion, but that is still a reaction to your upbringing. And we can do this for our characters as well, considering where our characters were born, considering what their upbringing was like, what their education was like. I'm going to do more on this. But this is how we can infiltrate our world into our characters from the get-go. Consider where they came from, consider that beginning of their life up until they hit the page, and think about what their experiences were. And this gives them a unique point of view. It also gives them insights into your wider setting. So, for example, I grew up in a house of archaeologists. I know, I'm still recovering. It has shaped the way I tell stories. It has shaped the way I draw maps. It has shaped the way I look at cities. It's shaped everything, which means that if you were writing in my point of view, you would be considering that fact. And now let's say it's not archaeology. Let's say I grew up in a house of magic. How does that look in your PAV? What is your character noticing now, which will allow you to put information about the magic on the page for your readers, but your character is just judging people because, their mom didn't do the magic like that. They're totally baking it wrong. These are ways that you can get the world building directly onto the page in a way that is interesting, in a way that tells your story, in a way that tells about your character. This is prime exposition. Another clever way to do this is to give them current professions. And The Witcher does this very well, the Witcher series. They make the main character a monster hunter in a world where the most interesting thing are the monsters, right? This is very, very well done. So think about what is the most important thing in your world and make sure that your characters have opinions on that or experience with that. It's a great way to get the point of view character into the description, into the narrative, into all of that stuff that's going to hit the page and infuse your whole novel, infuse your whole story with the world, not just sticking it on at the end, but really baking it in. Consider taboos and moral conflicts that are influenced by or in relation to those backgrounds. Let's go back to our religious character. Let's say our religious character cannot eat fish because it's not part of his religion. It's not allowed. Well, that's going to give him a very interesting moral quandary when the only thing to eat is fish. This is another way that you can then use that moment, that character moment, to tell me more about the world setting and why that is important. This is a way that you can do exposition in a way that feels very, very natural. So this is really how we can focus our world building to make our exposition easier. As E. Christopher Clark says, fish are friends, not food, at least in that religion. And yet this is absolutely a way for us to convey and create plots and character moments that do create those amazing world building moments as well. Let's associations with important organizations. Again, this could be where they trained. This could be what they aspire to. This could be something that their parents were associated with, so it is familiar to them. Again, this is a way that world builders can share their world inspiration directly through their characters so that the exposition is coming out as something that feels interesting and natural and character relevant. Also consider naming conventions. Now, naming things is hard. I literally made a video about it. So I'm not going to go more into detail on this slide, but what I will just say is that names tell us about the world the characters come from. And often they tell us about the aspirations of a culture. And if a character rejects a name, that also tells us something too. This is a wonderful nexus point for world and character to come together. And for more advice, again, naming things is hard. I made a whole video about how to name things, different strategies for naming things. It's a question that we get a lot on World Anvil. Physical expressions of background. We often describe our characters in terms of their hair color and their eye color, right? But what is more interesting to me is what are the setting details you can see on a character? What if they have meaningful tattoos? Why did they choose them? What do they mean? What do they mean in that culture? Do they have special weapons? Do they have special piercings? Tell me about the culture through the way your character looks. Tell me about the world through the way your character looks. Or, for example, do they have monster bite scars? That tells me that monsters are really dangerous in this world. You're giving me so much exposition by describing a character, and your audience wants to know what the characters looks like. They are curious. And so you're creating a description that's doing double, triple duty. And that is clever writing, and that is clever world building, and that is clever exposition too. Dialogue is another great way that you can do exposition. I use this so often. I wrote a short story recently in a dinosaur-infused world. And I was like, well, how are my characters going to swear? Because that's something that's important to me, I'm afraid. So I had them saying things like scale rot and egg blight, because that makes sense in a dinosaur-infused world. And it was such a small moment that gave me character and world building in literally 2 words. It's so compact, and baking in idioms, all of these things, it's such a clever, quick way to do exposition for your world, to do character moments all at the same time. Very, very compact, especially if you have a tight word count. This is a very efficient way of doing it. And if you have been frantically writing notes, by the way, or if you've liked any of ideas, all of these can be found on the character template of World Anvil. So World Anvil will present you with all of these prompts. You can use them or not as you would like. For example, personal history, gender identity, sexuality. You can think about education. You can think about the employment that they have and their achievements. These are all ways that you can expand your character to bring world and character together that makes your exposition easier. And yeah, that is something that we really love as writers. When things are easier, writing is hard. And so yeah, if you would like it, these templates are available for free on World Anvil, and you can go and check them out. And by the way, as you are doing all of this world building and character building, know that you're not just building a world, you're also creating way richer and more unique characters. Because the work that you're doing on setting is making your characters more specific. It's making your characters more tied into the world, and it's helping you get to understand what your character's experience has been, which means that as well as doing world building, you're doing character development, and then you're sort of doing double duty on that work. So yeah, because as we said, the world weaves through your characters and plot. World defines character. And this small amount of work actually makes everything stronger and richer. So that's characters. Let's talk about locations. Actually, I'm just going to check questions. Should you always start a world from a character POV? Or can you also start from a specific concept? Oh, that's such a good question. Very briefly on where to start world building, wherever you like. That is the answer. So we don't always get to choose where our inspirations come from. I've built worlds because I wanted to know what 2 genres look like when they kissed. I've built worlds because I had a really cool character concept and I wanted to build a world around it. I built worlds because I had a really cool magic system that I wanted to build a world around. The answer is wherever your inspiration starts you, go with it. But then think about how you can build that out. Now, I cannot go into this now because I do not have space in this talk, but we talk a lot on our channel and also on the World Anvil site about meta information, the core DNA of your setting. And I actually have a world building course on World Anvil, completely free, that you can follow that literally helps you start your world from wherever your inspirations have been. So, great question, Computer Adventures. I would say start wherever you want to start, wherever inspiration strikes you. My earphones turn themselves off. But make sure that you do make those foundational steps, or you're going to find yourself with holes later on. So yeah, I would recommend the world building course. I go into a lot of detail on how that can all hang together. Yeah. So let's talk about locations. Locations are so rich. And often when people think about world building, they think about location. That's actually why I didn't start with it, because I wanted to really front load the idea that, your characters are actually world building. But when we think about location, we often think, okay, that's what world building is. But so many books still have white room syndrome. So many books still feel like they don't really happen anywhere. And there are some tricks that I will share with you in your world building to make those settings feel rich and make sharing the actual world building easier, that exposition part. So, to start with, if you have magic in your world, if you have super technology in your world, don't forget about it. Please remember it exists when you are creating your scene settings. So consider, if there's magic, how do people protect themselves against random portals? Or how do they protect themselves against surprise demon attacks? Like, these are things that are really important. If there are portals in your world and people know that they exist, how are they dealing with that? And how does that manifest in your space? Does this mean safe rooms have like runes above them? And if you're in a room that doesn't have those runes, your character is getting a little bit nervous, because that's already story. See how easily world building turns into story? That's what we're doing here when we're baking this into our locations. So do consider this. Do consider how the magic and the technology and the special rules of your world do influence those specific scene locations, and consider how it can make those locations more interesting and immersive and distinct, like that example with the runes. It's going to create lots of cool character moments and plot moments, but it's also going to make your setting feel very specific, very immersive. That's what we want when we're building worlds. Consider, ditto, how the climate and the geography affect your settings. The number of times I have had people be, I read a sample of somebody's book recently for them, and they described that the world was in a swamp-like world, and there was this really hot sun, and then there was literally nothing about that. Nothing in the rooms. How did they keep the rooms cool? I have no idea. But that would have given me such a great sort of immersive feel in this like deep swamp world. Or let's say it's a city in a desert. How are people keeping out the sand? How are people keeping out the heat? How are people gathering moisture? And how does that manifest physically in things that you can see and feel and touch and smell in the settings that you're creating? Because that little detail where you say, oh, the thermostat was down, or oh, the sand catchers had failed and there was sand all over the floor, instantly catapults me into the setting. It's a tiny detail, but it tells me so much about the space. And again, it leads to a character moment. It leads to a plot moment. You're telling me so much about this setting just with that tiny little detail. And this is something that writers often forget, and it's something that is so, so valuable. Make sure you're building those challenges of geography, those challenges of climate into the scene locations that you create. And all it takes is a couple of words, but it gives so much back. And again, choose representative locations for your scenes if you possibly can. The number of scenes I have seen that take place in a general store, which is the most generic location in the world. What if they took place in a potion shop, or a cybertech lab, or on a festival grounds? Why don't you choose more interesting locations if you possibly can? Because it gives you that excuse to share your world and your setting, to immerse your readers, to create those character moments, and even create those plot moments through the world building that you are doing. And sometimes A bedroom is a bedroom is a bedroom. I don't know what you're writing and how many bedrooms there are, but every now and then you can't set it in some super epic location. You have to set your scene in something that makes sense for the scene, and that's something mundane like a bedroom or a kitchen or whatever. But remember, you can always fill your scene settings with world building rich items. If you are in a random bedroom, why are there, what's on the walls? What are your characters seeing? Let's imagine there are tapestries of ancient heroes, or if you're in a sci-fi, maybe there's a holodeck, hollow carousel of images going by. It's a tiny detail that reinforces your setting, reinforces your genre, gives you so much. It stops it feeling like you're in this blank white room. It creates so much for you. And again, for your characters and your plot, this gives you a lot to work with. This can give you an emotional moment as they look at these things. You might have songs of lost heroes in the background. You might have hyperspanners littering the workshop. I don't know what your setting is, but there is so much opportunity to take these tiny moments to put these items and these decorative flourishes into your scene settings as an exposition moment. And of course, where character meets location. How would your main character describe a space? So in a short story I wrote recently, and this is paraphrased, there's a moment where the main character is thinking, gosh, this room is really horrible. It's a common room on a space station. And they're like, even my mom would be horrified by this. And she was literally born in an asteroid mine. And that is such a small thought, but that tells me about character. That tells me about the character thinking of their mom, which probably means they're younger. It tells me that, this room is super battered. It's probably a rundown location. I use the word vacuum tape, which is a made up thing. And that gives a sort of modern spacey flourish because this is taking place on a space station. That small line does so much work for my setting. And again, especially in short stories, we're limited on our word count. We cannot wax lyrical about the way the setting looks. We have to get our language to be clinically precise sometimes. And so these are the moments where being able to do exposition and character and plot and description and opinion all in one single sentence, that does so much for us as writers. That is how we do exposition now. That is how we make sure that we are sharing our setting in a way that's meaningful to our characters, that's telling us about the world, that's not boring for our readers. That's the dream, right? So, sensory experience. Again, I have a whole video about immersing your readers in the senses. And by the way, there are more than 5 senses. So I won't go a lot into detail here, but yeah, do go watch the video if you want to learn about this. It is honestly the most easy way to make your descriptions vivid and immersive and enticing. And of course, the building and settlement templates on World Anvil, because I wrote them, also have these prompts in them. So again, they are available for free on World Anvil. There's a tiny screenshot here. Actually, it's so small. I might blow this up slightly. Boom! That's not done much difference. But you can see there's design, sensory and appearances there. We've got contents and furnishings of a room, hazards in a room. These are all things that you can think about to enhance your world building, your setting locations, your scene locations. And yeah, you can find all of those prompts on World Anvil for free. And finally, let's talk about plots, because there are the 3 sort of pinions of a story. There is character, setting, and plot. I would argue, again, as you know, that setting is probably the most fundamental of them, but nobody likes a story in which nothing happens. So how can we make our world building and our plot come together so that that beautiful tapestry that I talked about is supported and maintained? Well, again, a lot of writers introduce magic or science fiction tech and then they forget about it. So don't do that. That's my first advice. Remember that your main characters and your organizations and everybody who is making decisions and trying to achieve things in your world, they are going to be using the tools that they have available, which includes magic and technology if those exist in the world. So please don't forget about them. Make sure that your protagonists are smart and they are using the tools that you have set down for them. That is honestly my number one tip for plot for new writers. And of course, remember that characters and organizations only desire things that make sense because of the world. So their motivations are tied directly to the setting. And the closer you can tie those motivations to the setting, the more you can kind of move everything together, embroider everything into itself, and the more it feels like a really integrated piece. So essentially, excuse me, the Hunger Games only makes sense. The idea of having these gladiatorial Hunger Games literally only makes sense because of the setting's past rebellion. That is critical for understanding why the heck you would do this thing in the first place. And I literally, when I was researching this, I went and looked on Reddit and I found a whole thread of people being like, why the hell do the Hunger Games even exist? Like, why is that a thing in this world? And it's because they'd missed the point about the setting's past, because they'd only watched the movie, they hadn't read the book. And that is just that's so fundamental for understanding why that is a desirable thing, and it sets up all of the motivations for everything that's going on. It all comes from the world. Ditto the Lord of the Rings. Like, if taking a piece of jewelry and chucking it into a mountain makes zero sense, unless you realize that a ring has been made by a Dark Lord and that is literally the only way to destroy it. And that's world building. And that world building is what sets all of the motivations in play in the Lord of the Rings. That is wonderful. That means that plot and world building are doing this, and that is exactly what we want in our novels. So make sure, if you can, that your character motivations and also the motivations of any organizations, like what does this church want, what does this university trying to achieve, what is the secret society trying to do, make sure they are tied to the world building, and you will have a much easier time sharing your world building with people because it will be directly relevant to the plot and directly relevant to what your characters want. And that really is what we're talking about when we say characters and organizations need to desire things that make sense because of the world. Again, I have a video for this one. Costs and limitations. Please do not make magic without costs and limitations. It will destroy your world. Disaster. So introduce costs and limitations. I have a whole video on how to do that. And make sure that they are world appropriate. For example, if you wear the wrong ring and you just feel a bit iffy, that's not good. Even if you wear the one ring and you can feel the life force draining away, it's dramatic, but is it iconic? No. If you wear the one ring and the ancient, terrifying Dark Lord knows exactly where you are, holy moly, you are making a choice when you put on that ring. And that is an excellent moment where costs and limitations come together with the world building to create something that could only exist in this world, something that becomes so iconic that people even today have the one ring literally as their wedding rings, which, by the way, I think is a little bit creepy, but that's cool. You do you guys. But that's how iconic that item becomes, because it's tied to the setting, because it's tied everything together. So what happens when you've baked your world building into your characters, when you've baked your world building into your setting locations, and you've baked your world building into your plots? You take that detail and you turn it into obstacles that your characters must overcome. Or you turn it to solutions to obstacles. And that is harking back to that quote from Brandon Sanderson that was saying, your audience's tolerance for you solving problems with magic is directly related to how well they understand the magic. That is the same for all of these elements. That is the same with the one ring. If somebody doesn't know what the one ring does and it magically solves a problem, that is not satisfying. If you know exactly what it does, you know exactly the dilemma, and then they use it to solve a problem, you understand what's at stake, and it turns into a solution to an obstacle that is world building related. Mwah! That is what we're looking for. And the other way to do this is to make your world building and setting detail emotional for your characters. Have that background become a reveal. For example, who was their unknown parent becomes a reveal. It becomes an emotional moment. And if it happens that that is somebody who's super important that you need to introduce because they're critical to the plot, then you've done your exposition, but you've done it in a way that is highly emotional for a character, and your readers are going to eat it up. That is not exposition that somebody's leafing through and going, oh, when will the story start? That is exposition that is directly relevant to your character, directly relevant to your plot, and something that your readers will be so hungry for. Another example of this could be, let's say in a school setting, you shame them for not knowing something. So, oh, this student stands in front of the class and they're asked a question that, by the way, is exposition and directly setting relevant, and they don't know the answer. And they're terribly embarrassed. And then they have to go have a reaction scene where their friends are consoling them because they didn't know the answer, and now they're in detention. That is excellent world building, because it's world building that is emotional. So I do have a video. Actually, I'm going to go here. I do have a video that is about this in motion and emotional technique. It's called the 2 Secret Rules of Exposition, and it is literally that. It is how to share the world building you've already done in a way that will get your readers fascinated, in a way that really will make your plot move, your characters move. It'll make stuff happen, and it'll feel engaging. So do go check that video out if you want to. I would be honored if you do. If you do, please leave a comment. It'd be lovely to say hi. And yeah, that is something that I have a whole video unpacking in more detail, because it's such a critical concept of exposition. And yeah, your world building should always be in motion and emotional. It's like it's on my heart. It's the principle through which I write, because you just need it. It's so important. One other way that you can set up exposition with all of that world building you've baked in is to get your audience wondering why. Set up a mystery. You don't even have to say it's a mystery. You just drop hints and get your audience curious. Let's say you see a guy walking down the street and they have a weird eye tattoo, and your main character doesn't know why. And then you see another one with a weird eye tattoo on their forehead, and you don't know why. And the third time, your main character is probably going to ask somebody, what's with this weird eye tattoo that I don't know what it is? And your audience will be so grateful that the main character asked, because a big eye tattoo on the forehead is really weird, and they will want to know. And now you've opened the door for explaining how there is this odd religion that's just cropped up where everybody has an eye emblazoned on their forehead. And isn't that crazy? And gosh, I'm going to need this information later. This is all foreshadowing for what's going to happen in Act 2. Do you see how it works? You get them curious. You drop hints, and then when they can't stand it any longer because you've dropped all of those world building details of character and plot and location, then and only then do you tell them why. And your audience, your readers, will be on the end of their seats. They will be so hungry for this world building. It won't feel like exposition. It won't feel like you're ramming it down their throat. They will be chewing the page to know why everybody has these weird tattoos. That is exactly how we do exposition. That is what we want. We want people to be so hungry for the world information that they cannot get it out of us fast enough. And that is how we get our readers hooked on our world without them even realizing. That is how we do it. So I flashed this slide, spoiler alert. This is the in motion and emotional technique. I have a lot more information there about how to do this. And I also have a common exposition mistakes, because I tell you, when I first made this presentation, it was a freaking book. It was like 150 slides long, and I didn't want to do that to you guys. And I didn't want to do it at the lovely folks at the Authortube Writing Convention, who have so kindly invited me as a guest speaker. So please, if you are curious, if you want to learn more about what you might accidentally be, dropping the ball on with exposition, I do have a video about the most common exposition mistakes. And these are the things that when I see them, they go clang on the page. And it's so easy to avoid them. And I share how in the video, basically. And I'm sorry I can't share how here. I'm not being deliberately elusive. I literally just do not have time. Yeah, it was Chunky Boy presentation, Kat. Yes, absolutely. I shared it with Kat, and I was like, Kat, help me. It is so long. And we cut out the bit that we thought was going to be the most useful for you folks. I did tell you about this already. I did just want to reiterate in case I buried the lead. In that case, sorry. I have written a course on how to start world building. Even if you are an experienced world builder, this is a course that is designed to help you. And if you are an absolute beginner, it will walk you by the hand through one method of creating a world. There are many methods of creating a world, but this is the one that I would recommend to start with. And it also drops a lot of fundamental world building craft information that will really get you ahead of the curve. And it's 10 lessons long. And in those, I really need to get a better headset. It's 10 lessons long, and in those 10 lessons, it will take you through setting up those fundamental points of the world I told you about, things like focus points, things like really understanding what you want your audience to be experiencing, your readers to be experiencing, building in theme. It will help you create amazing peoples. It will help you create cultures. It will help you build a history for your world. And it will even help you start thinking of what's happening in your world and help you create a plot or two you could use for a novel or a short story or something. So it really is aimed to get you very, very far in 10 lessons. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, go to worldanvil.com, create an absolutely free account. I recommend you start by creating a world. You don't have to. And then click courses on the top bar, and it's right there for you. How to start world building, absolutely free. My gift to the world. I hope it is helpful. I am really, really passionate about world building. Okay, I think I have talked a great deal, so it must be time for me to answer some questions. Oh, Kat, you wondrous, wondrous person. Thank you for collecting these for me. Let's have a look. We have one from Leon Newton, great name, who says, be clinical, be precise. How do you effectively convey world depth and complexity within the constraints of short stories' word limit, where traditional novel structures may not apply and every word counts? Oh, my lovely Leon. I am currently in the Mary Robinette Kowal short story cohort. If you don't know who Mary Robinette Kowal is, she's an absolute guru and award-winning author. And this was absolutely something I struggled with before I had the opportunity to be in this cohort, for which I am very grateful. And she is a mistress of this. So in the first 3 lines, you need to convey who are we following? Who is the POV character? Give us a grounding sensory detail. Tell us what something smells like, or what the air tastes like, or how it feels to be there. And then do exactly what I just told you in the rest of the presentation. Bake that world building in through tiny details. So, for example, I wrote a short story recently in which people are riding dinosaurs. And the dinosaurs were really a core part of like the fun we are having in this world. And so I wanted to convey detail about dinosaurs. And so what did I do? I had somebody put sun wax on a dinosaur to protect them from getting burnt. And I had somebody feed their dinosaur jerky flakes. Tiny, tiny details. And these were details that, like, one character is putting sun wax on their dinosaur and the other character is looking at them longingly and wishing that they were rubbing their hands over him instead. Yes, I went there. And that is a thing that conveys world and action and character in a single sentence. That's what I mean when I'm saying be clinical, be precise. Get your descriptions to do character duty, to do plot duty, and to do world setting duty all at the same time. That is what I would recommend. And remember that the first draft of your story might be quite long, and that then you can go back and figure out how to do it cleverly the second time. Do not expect it all to come out perfect the first time. That is my recommendation. So yeah, and practice doing these things. You know, take a short story you wrote that was a little bit long, look at some of the world information that you've shared and think, is there a way I could share this through a character POV, through free indirect speech, through a character action that also tells me something about the world, like putting sun cream on a dinosaur. That is what I would say. I hope that was helpful, Leon. Ooh, next up we have Dreaming Truth Felicia. Hi. Who asks, is it necessary to use every item that you mentioned throughout the story? Asking because I hear that everything written should move the plot forward. That is a great question, Felicia. I have given you a menu of options. Use them a la carte. So for some settings, and particularly longer things, we're spending a great deal of time with our characters. We do need to build them out better. We do need to give more character detail. And in an ideal world, that character detail will tell us more about the world that they are from and why they are the way they are. And that's all world building meets character into exposition. But in a shorter piece, you definitely don't need to have a massively detailed, pages and pages of character detail. The same is true of setting. The same is true of plot. So use them a la carte, use what you can sprinkle in. Again, as I said to Leon, remember that you may not get all of this the first draft. This may be things that you seed in later in draft 2 or draft 3 as you edit, and you think, oh, isn't it interesting that such and such? Or I wonder how that could work. Oh, I can add that to this character's POV here, or I can seed that into their language. And there will always be some of the menu that you prefer to other parts because we have preferences as writers. And there will always be things that are not appropriate for your setting or your story or whatever. And those will change depending on the piece you write. And they'll change more if you write more different kinds of things, and they'll change less if you write more of the same thing. So I hope that that has helped. It is absolutely a la carte. And yes, I totally agree. Everything that you write should move the plot forward with a caveat that you do need to tell us what the characters are feeling. And that doesn't always move the plot forward, but it certainly needs to be on the page. And you also need to tell us a little bit about where they are and what they're experiencing, even if that's not moving the plot forward as well. Because we do need to give our readers an experience. We can't just tell them this happened and then this happened and then I did this and then I did this and then I did that and then I did the other. It's the setting and the character as much as the plot that allows us to tell a story that sticks in people's minds and hearts. So yes, I totally agree. Keep the plot moving forward, but don't be a slave to it. Don't be a slave. Remember that character and setting are also very critical. Okay, let's have a look, guys. You have such great questions. How do you pull yourself out of the zone where you've been caught up in making the logic and decisions of your world and you've forgotten to actually acquire a plot? Oh, isn't life strange? I know the feeling. So this happens to me sometimes. I'm a very world first writer. I always have been. Even before World Anvil, even when I was a novice, I was often thinking about the setting before I was thinking about characters and before I was thinking about plot. So remember that the minute you take your world and you look at it through a first person perspective, you will start seeing conflicts. There will be things that are not okay for the people in your world. And if there aren't, then you need to create them. In general, when you don't have a plot, it's because there's not some kind of conflict somewhere that your characters can engage with. So essentially, that kind of goes back to the plot thing of what I was talking about. Give people motivations that make sense for the world, create constrictions in the world, and then start exploring what happens. Give your characters motivations because of where they've come from, because of what they need and what they want, because of the world that they are in right now. And that will allow you to get your plot. That will help you find your plot. And there are many writers who are not plotters, and they find their plot by writing about a character in a difficult situation. And that is also a good way to do it. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't have every beat of my plot written out, that's not necessarily a problem. Start by following a character who is deeply embedded in the world that you've built. And it sounds like you're somebody who loves building worlds because you talked about logic and details. And make sure that you are following their struggles, and soon a plot will emerge. And it's also, I said this before, I'll say it again, remember that you don't have to get it right the first time. You can write a bit and then decide that that was very interesting, but that's not actually the story you want to tell. You can write a first draft and look at it and decide, actually, I don't want to write this, or I have the makings of a story here, but I need to do X, Y, and Z, or I need my character to get to the plot earlier, which is very, very common for first drafts. All of this is fine. We can fix it in post. So what I would say, if you love your world, think about who the character is that you want to tell the story of, or who would be an interesting person in that world to consider. Start imagining the world through their eyes. Another little trick, journal from their point of view. So sit down and think about what your character encounters on a day, what's bothering your character. Write in the first person if you would like to capture their voice, but also to start thinking about the way this character is interacting with the world and what their problems are. Pretty soon, I think you will find a plot. I hope that helps. If other people would like to suggest things, we have lots and lots of writers in the chat. So please do share your own feelings on these as well. Let's have a look. Great questions. SD Hudson. Ooh. Whatever inspirations you get could become part of the 2025 AWC anthology. Yes, that is a thing that is going on, folks. Do not forget to check that out. Let's have a look. Ooh, Penumbra Mine MM Ward says, how do you feel about creating world-specific slangs and songs, prayers and profanity for daily life, ceremonies, and holidays? I love it. I absolutely adore it. Yes, yes, please, every day of the week. 2 caveats on that. In my, going back to the slides, in this video, watch out for something that I call the learning curve problem, which is where you front load too much terminology and your readers are left going, we never want our readers to be so confused that they throw the book across the room. A little bit confused, very curious. That's where we want them to be, and then very eager. But if you put them off with too much terminology too soon, they will get sad and they will leave your book, and we don't want that. So I would recommend watching that video if you're looking for exposition tips. And the other one is the con slang video that I made, where I also talk more about creating in-world slang, creating songs and prayers and profanity and these kinds of things. I love it. I think it's wonderful. It is a fantastic expression of world in motion through character with opinion. It really does exactly what I've been talking about here. It brings world building, character and plot together in a beautiful tapestry. Just that caveat on learning curve, because you can lose people if you judge it wrong. Okay, we have time for one more question. And it's from Right Now, another fantastic name, love it, who says, I've created a fantasy world with extreme magic weather conditions, rain, fire from the sky, fog causing delusions. As a world building connoisseur, what crazy magic weathers would you want to see? I would say, because I'm a meta nerd, whatever is the best expression of the theme of your world. Whatever's going to tell me a deeper truth. And I know that Right Now is a pretty experienced author, Kaufman. So that's what I would say. I would say, what is a deeper truth you are trying to tell about your setting? That. Find a way to turn it into a metaphor. Find a way to turn it into an illusion. That is what I would want to see. I would want to see this wonderful, wonderful idea, which I think is great, by the way, very dramatic, a great way to have exposition when it's literally raining from the sky on you. Mwah. But turn it into something thematically meaningful and deep. It can be related to a character journey. It can be related to a deeper truth about what the world is about. But that is what I would say. I challenge you, get deep, get literary, get theoretical, get meta. I'm all about meta. So 2 things just before we go. Oh, goodness. There we go. Number 1, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your amazing questions. And a big shout out in chat. Can we have a clap in chat for the amazing cat? You can just write clap if you want to thank the amazing cat who has been sharing things left, right, and center, getting your questions to me and everything else. And by the way, absolutely, our YouTube channel and so much of the content we make on World Anvil is a team effort. Cat is a freaking hero. She also puts up with me. Love you, Cat. A massive thank you to everyone here. And if you are curious about World Anvil and you would like to know more, please do check it out. You can have an explore for free. There's a whole bunch of stuff you could do there for free, including checking out that course, including checking out those world building templates. Everything there is free to use. And if you would like a subscription which gives you a whole bunch of options, it allows you to use the novel writing software. It allows you to do fun stuff with your presentation mode, use a bunch of the slightly more advanced features as well, and it takes some of the caps off the free version. Then yeah, we have a code for you to use, Authortube Writer. and that will get you 50% off the recurring subscription. And if you are somebody who does not like to pay recurring subscriptions, we do have lifetime memberships as well. So that is an option if that is your preference. We know some people like one and some people like the other. So we try to cater for both as much as we can. And the very, very last thing, don't forget the feedback form. So there has been a feedback form going through every single one of these, and please, please, please do fill it out for this talk. I would like to know if you enjoyed it. I would like to know if I could do better for you. And yeah, if you have any more questions, put those through the feedback form as well, and I will try to answer them. It has been just such a pleasure hanging out with you all. Thank you so, so much for joining us. And I hope that you have an amazing rest of your convention. I know that there are so many fantastic things on. I cannot wait to see all the rest of the splendid programming. So yeah, I guess that's it. I know that we are going next to Mr. Michael, and we are going to learn about some help me, Kat. What are we learning about? I bet Kat knows. Oh goodness. Oh, I just saw that there's an issue with our Discord link. If you go to worldanvil.com/Discord, you will be able to join the World Anvil Discord most easily that way. That is what I recommend. And the amazing Cat coming through again. Oh, we have Michael Evans with the author sidekick. 5 reader secrets to transform your author life. Sounds intriguing. I cannot wait. Folks, enjoy your con. And as we say here, grab your hammer and go world build. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.